Wow, covered all bases.
The next item is Office of Management and Budget, final award of RFP for Sandridge Golf Cart Fleet Replacement.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kristen Daniels, Budget Director. On November 5th, 2019, the Board approved the final ranking of proposals received for the replacement of the existing golf cart fleet at Sandridge and authorized staff to negotiate with the Yamaha Golf Cart Company. Excuse me. After a meeting with Yamaha's representative, the selection committee determined that the Quiet Tech golf carts were the best investment for Sandridge. Although these carts are slightly more expensive at $450 more per cart than the base bid, they offer a few additional features such as a quieter gas engine. They also offer independent rear suspension for improved safety, and they will also bring about $300 additional at trade-in. So as for the financing of these carts, staff is proposing a 4-year interfund loan from the general fund in the amount of $316,900. Although the golf course has performed well over these past few years, interfund borrowing is still necessary for their larger capital purchases. So the proposed interest rate on this loan is 3%, which is higher than the 2.2% that was earned on county investments for the quarter ending September 30th, 2019. So basically, the golf course would pay the general fund 3%, and it would be a little higher than what they're earning on their investments. 3% is also likely less than what an outside third party would charge Sandridge for this loan. So structuring this as an interfund loan benefits both the golf course and the general fund. Staff is also recommending early payoff of the existing 2015 interfund loan that we still have in the amount of $11,015. There is 2 months left on this loan, and paying off the loan a little bit early will eliminate any overlapping debt from the time of when we surplus or we trade in the 2015 carts to when we purchase the 2019 carts. So that's all I have today, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I've got one.
Yes.
Kristen, how much could we save at Sandridge if we just traded in the old golf carts and then had everybody walk?
Okay, so I have that. The trade-in of the current 156 2015 Yamaha golf carts that we currently own is $436,800.
Sounds like a great deal, and we have golfers who are in better health. I think this is a win-win.
We might have a decrease in, yes, customers, but, you know, that's a gamble. I have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien and a second from Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is biosolids rulemaking comments. Vinny, you're up.
Oh, boy, it's going to be a long year.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director, Utility Services. We outlined in the agenda item that we came to the board on July 16th with a set of comments on the draft rule to Florida Administrative Code 62-640 with respect to the biosolids land application. Those were submitted ahead of the DEP deadline of July 29th, 2019. Staff subsequently was at some other meetings where we were informed by Mr. Frick from the DEP that due to the voluminous number of comments, that it would be more than likely that they would have a second round of public discussion. But that never happened. Then the notice came out on October 29th. We included a copy of the email from the DEP with a 21-day deadline to submit comments back to the DEP for a now second revised rule. So we included some comments from staff with respect to the second version of the rule. I have to say that it's a little bit confusing because the first rule was out based on the existing set of data, a first draft came out, but then that was modified, and then a second one came out. So staff was at a loss as to which version we were trying to comment on. But we included comments on the second draft of the rule, and those have to be submitted on or before the close of business today. So staff wanted to bring this item back to the board as an update of where we are with respect to comments to the DEP. We have a set of comments that we're ready to submit to the department, certainly looking for direction from the board with respect to any modifications or enhancements to those comments. We feel that the DEP has done a better job, but still lacks a lot of information and still ambiguity with respect to the rule that's been proposed. I will note that we had kind of like a top 5 issues that we had put into the agenda item. I'll just run through those quickly. The first is the existing land application sites will remain grandfathered until the permit renews for up to 3 years. So based on the 80,000 tons of land applied biosolids, that could be a substantial amount of additional nutrients to the soil and or groundwater, i.e. environment. There are some modifications to the threshold that would require groundwater modeling and testing, but only if a certain applicator exceeds 160 pounds. We do note that it's now total nitrogen, just not plant available nitrogen, and according to the TAC, they are looking at now water extractable phosphorus as a better indicator of some of the nutrient loads to the site. We do note that in our world, in the utility world, we have fluctuating influent levels, that it's not consistent, but yet the way that the rule is written, there could be a momentary sample done by said utility that could basically be on par for the rest of the year. And while the NP is required to be updated annually and submitted with respect to the phosphorus capacity index, we believe that there's ambiguity in the timing of this that could cause some issues with potential land application sites. And lastly, we attached the CERC, which is the economic, I had that here, I'm sorry, was the statement of estimated regulatory costs that the DEP put together. We believe it to be Enron math-esque. We don't understand where some of these numbers came together, but at the end of the day, the point being is that the DEP believes that they will do increased monitoring, increased oversight of these permitted sites with no additional cost, and we believe that to be a hard case because previously they were only going to some of these sites once every 5 years or if somebody complained about an issue. So that is in summary what staff has put together, certainly looking for board direction on how to proceed and available for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Solari.
Happy to help, Madam Chairman.
We yield.
So, Vinnie, thank you for that update. But if one reads FDEP's proposed biosolids rule, one certainly can't come away knowing that the environment is going to be protected. The language is convoluted and open to multiple interpretations. If you ask 3 different people what the rule means, you're going to get 3 different answers. So at a minimum, I would suggest that the board authorize the utilities to submit its comments to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. But I'd also suggest that the board authorize the chairwoman to submit additional comments of a broader sense on behalf of the board, noting, first, that the proposed rule does not go far enough to clearly protect the environment. Second, that the law is too convoluted, unclear, and open to multiple interpretations to be good law. And third, that a simple, clear, and understandable solution that will protect the environment is already available and found in rule number 62-640.400, section 12. So essentially, land application of biosolids will not be permitted anywhere in the state of Florida unless the applicant for a site plan affirmatively demonstrates that the phosphorus loads will not add, the nitrogen phosphorus loads will not add to the nitrogen phosphorus loadings in the watershed. If DEP will not recommend such suggested language, then given the conditions around Blue Cypress Lake, which mirror near exactly what science has already determined are such that will lead to significant environmental damage with the dumping of biosolids, at least clearly carve out Indian River County and the headwaters of the St. Johns River with the affirmatively demonstrates language above and allow Indian River County to maintain its moratorium on the dumping of biosolids. If the provision of the rule that gives present permit holders 3 more years to dump biosolids on lands that will pollute the environment remains in effect for Indian River County. I would suggest we ask the county attorney to start investigating what causes of actions we may have in law to file against anyone who comes into Indian River County and knowingly dumps biosolids, which present science makes clear will pollute our environment. Given all we're paying and will pay to remediate the damage that pollutants have done to the lagoon, we in Indian River County simply cannot afford another $100 million remediation project to clean up the Blue Cypress Lake area. If FDEP is not going to do its job and protect the environment, we need to be prepared to step up and protect the natural resources of Indian River County. And I'd be happy to make that in form of a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner O'Brien. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Anybody from the public?
Just while he's coming up, I take it you have this in a quick form that Dylan can review, and then Susan can sign it real quick, because
And I did, in preparing for this, discuss this both with the county administrator and the county attorney, and I'll be happy to work with Dylan if there's any other
we need to
questions.
get it out today, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
Fantastic, thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Paul Fafeta, President of the Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Solari, thank you very much. That was outstanding. We've met with Mr. Burke, Clean Water Coalition has, recently on this issue. This is near and dear to our hearts, as you know. We have sent a letter very similar to what's been discussed already today to the Director of Wastewater Management in Tallahassee with our concerns as well, and a copy has been given to Mr. Burke. And we're 100% supportive with what you just stated, Mr. Solari, and I'd like to get a copy of that. That's outstanding, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want your copy autographed or not?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Anybody else from the public? All right, commissioners, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is under County Attorney Matters, Indian River County Committees, member reappointments. Mr.
Thank you very much. Per Resolution 2011-72, every fall, the County Attorney's Office reaches out to various committee members trying to get a sense of their desire to be reappointed if their terms are expiring in January. Attached in your backup is a list of the members who wish to be reappointed to the various committees on which they serve on. I've included a list of also for the board of the vacancies that the county will have in January. And finally, we've also included a list of those folks who've decided not to be requested to be reappointed. Simply just recommend that the board consider the list and reappoint the board members or the committee members as the board deems appropriate. I just want to thank Christina Moore, who works very hard on trying to keep up with all the committees and get all the reappointments lined up. So with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this?
Move to approve the list of reappointments.
I have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Next item is Emergency Services District, collective bargaining agreement between Indian River County and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 2201. Chief, welcome.
Morning, Commissioners and Madam Chair. For your consideration today is an agreement between the IAFF Local 2201 and the Emergency Services District, which is the Board of County Commissioners sitting as the guiding body. There were a number of different changes that were made throughout this contract, trying to make it a little easier for both management and the local to be able to work through some of the issues that have occurred over the past several years. the major highlights we've identified as we've gone through and put your packet together, the changes that occurred in the contract language, and that went through each section of the contract and set that out for you. It does include a 3% for this year, retroactive to, our recommendation is a 3% retroactive to October, the first pay period in October, and a 3% next year, the following year, and then an opener for the final year of the contract. It's a 3-year contract. We did change some of typically in fire service, they're allowed to do shift exchanges. The shift exchange process was very restrictive for us, for both the employees and for management, trying to find the right person with all the certifications and levels of the things that were out there. So a lieutenant can now exchange for a lieutenant, an engineer can exchange for a lieutenant, and it eased that process up a little bit for us. As long as we have the right people in the right places on the shift, doesn't create any additional overtime for it, we're fine with that. We went through a rather creative process to try to equalize the market a little bit. We realized that after our employees that were here for a couple of years were actually under market paid, and that's when we were losing them. So in that, basically that 2-year to 7-year market is when we were starting to lose our employees. So we made some adjustments. We called it a market equity adjustment, and it basically is 2 steps in the step plan that actually the employees got. And then we changed the 17-step plan to a 14-step plan. So it's all spelled out how all those gyrations take place in the contract. I would be remiss if I didn't thank some of the folks that actually gave us a hand putting all this together. Ms. Daniels from Budget, Mike Zito, of course, looking over my shoulder to make sure I didn't mess up too bad. Susan Boyle, and of course my staff at the Emergency Service Department, Kevin Youngton and Aaron Baskins. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have about the contract or any concerns. Staff's recommendation is to approve the contract.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the chief? No?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
move staff recommendation.
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer and a second by Commissioner Zork. Are there any comments? Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item?
John O'Connor, President, IAFF Local 2201. I just wanted to come up and say thank you to Chief Stone and his staff for working with us and trying to get a very amicable contract. So we appreciate his time and effort, and also the consideration of the board. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
I'd just like to thank the union bargaining team, the union membership, as well as the management team headed up by Chief Stone and Mike and Suzanne and Kristen, as mentioned, in working together to create this agreement.
Wonderful. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Next item is Solid Waste Disposal District, termination of recycling agreement with Tropical Recycling. Welcome back, Mr. Burke.
Morning. Again, Vincent Burke, Director Utility Services. You may recall that we used to have a dual stream program with Recommunity. Prior to going to the single stream in 2015, we assigned the recycling contract from Recommunity to Tropical Recycling, and also extended the term through one of the amendments till 2020. And then last year, the term was extended 2 additional years to terminate August 31st, 2022. As we noted in the agenda item back in August 13th to be exact, Tropical Recycling notified SWID that due to unforeseen weather events, it severely affected their ability to receive and to process the recyclable materials. Subsequent to that notification, we learned that Tropical Recycling facilities that they had been leasing was condemned by the city of Fort Pierce. So you may recall that last week we had brought to you a agreement, in a local agreement with St. Lucie County to have St. Lucie County receive and process the single stream recyclable materials. We know that St. Lucie County has that item on their agenda for today for approval. So the following, I think, identifies the issues at hand, and we would recommend that the board, the SWID board, approve and authorize the chairman to sign the termination of recyclables transfer processing and marketing service agreement between SWID and Tropical Recycling. And I did want to just take the time to thank Mr. Brian Katz and his team for the many years of outstanding service to the county, where a lot of other municipalities had been paying for some of the recycling services. There was no net cost to the SWID department, even though the AMV had dropped precipitously from what it was initially in the term with the start of their contract. So obviously Brian has done a great job and was a good partner, and we're sad to actually have this termination, but certainly understand some of the issues with respect to their facility down at Fort Pierce. I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Madam Chairman, I'll be happy to move staff recommendation.
I do have a question. No.
Sure, I have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner Flesher. Commissioner O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vinnie, is Brian going to try to rebuild, or is he going to just walk away and give up on it?
He does not give up easily, and
Okay.
he is looking to try to, I think, pursue any and all options with respect to staying in the recycling business. I think he's put literally his heart and soul into that, and so I think he's going to be trying to look at some other options available.
Okay. And then, and he understands why we're having to do this, and we haven't burned any bridges with him. Okay, great, thank you.
He's been a great partner, so I would want to make sure that as well.
Right, yeah.
All right, any other discussion on this item? Anybody from the public? We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of a leachate pilot study. Mr. Burke.
Thank you. On July 16th, 2019, the Solid Waste Disposal District Board approved staff recommendation to further evaluate the thermal evaporation technology to treat the leachate that's generated from the Class 1 landfill that currently is collected, mixed with the centrate from the residual dewatering facility, and then sent downstream to the West Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. You may recall that that facility has one of the most stringent permit requirements with respect to some of the constituents that we're required to apply with. So we have today a leachate pilot study to capture and test up to 1,000 gallons a day of leachate. It's a turnkey proposal, 5-day process to treat, again, up to 1,000 gallons per day. The Heartland technology is going to be used. This was one that Geosyntec had looked at between membrane or through thermal destruction, and the two companies that offered thermal destruction, Heartland offered a more advantageous solution, and they claim that they can evaporate up to 93% of the liquids with the solid material that would be bound and then placed back into the Class 1 landfill. They will do a turnkey proposal to provide the pre, during, and post-analytical testing so we can evaluate the efficiency of what's coming in and what's actually leaving. We will have a third-party NELAP certified laboratory pull those samples so that we are not getting involved in any way, shape, or form to make that determination. And then there'll be some on-site electrical generation units to be able to power this thing, because it's like a big toaster, I understand. So it has some kWs. So we would like to recommend that we get board approval to waive the requirements for bids in order to evaluate the pilot project that's proposed by Heartland Technology, working with Indian River County Eco District, so that we can truly evaluate the effectiveness of this small scale. We would certainly come back to you with the results of that. Funding for this work is budgeted and available in other professional services account for $46,375, and staff recommends that the SWID board waive the requirement for bids pending approval of the required insurance by risk, and after approval by the county attorney's office as to form a legal sufficiency, and approve the proposal by the Indian River Eco District LLC for the leachate pilot study, and authorize the chairman to execute the same. Certainly available for questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Comments, concerns?
Happy to move staff recommendation.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari, a second by Commissioner Flesher. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none. Commissioners, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Burke, next item is an amendment number 1 to work order number 4.
I had previously mentioned that Geosyntec, under the CCNA Continuing Consultant Services Agreement, had provided us a technical memo with respect to some of the options with the leachate treatment. we're looking to an amendment to number 1 to that work order number 4 to have, again, a third-party independent engineering firm assess the efficiency of the pilot project, to look at the test results from the NELAP certified laboratory, and to provide a technical memorandum. Part of that technical memorandum will be to look at the economies of scale to ramp up from 1,000 gallons per day to 15 to 20,000 gallons of leachate, what that would cost, not only on the capital side, but also kind of like a 10-year cost of ownership, because there are some rough numbers that were in the previous technical memo, but we certainly want to make sure that, 1, the pilot project works, and 2, we understand what those costs are, and then bring those back to the board for further consideration. So we do have money in other professional services for the amount of $19,975, which is amendment number 1 to work order number 4, and we respectfully request that the district board approve amendment number 1 with Geosyntec in the amount of $19,975 for professional services related to the evaluation of the aforementioned leachate pilot study, and authorize the chairman to execute the same as presented. Certainly available for any questions the board may.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Madam Chair, move staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Solari. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this? Seeing none. Commissioners, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is yard waste processing and recycling services agreement with Atlas Organics. Mr. Burke?
Yes, thank you. We went out for an RFP with respect to the yard waste processing and recycling services. We've had a good relationship with Mr. Mulch. We do know that Mr. Mulch has effectively given us a 90-day notice with him terminating services at the end of this calendar year. And so staff has been negotiating with the top-ranked firm, Atlas Organics, out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. Initially, we brought to the board a 7+3 term that was in the bid documents, but we have received notice from Atlas that in order to amortize some of the large capital investments of several $1 million, they respectfully request a 10-year term. Staff is okay with that. The contract price was based on $11.49 per ton to process, that's to receive, grind, and screen the material, and then $12.45 per ton to transport and recycle that mulch. One of the things that was pretty clear was the fact that they were willing to step up and implement up to a $250,000 improvement to the yard waste facility. However, they certainly had a valid reason to state that if for some reason the agreement is terminated prior to the first year, that the county would pay them back the $250,000 that they're investing. They wanted that for a longer term, but we were not comfortable with that. So we have negotiated early termination penalty, if you will, of $250,000. I don't think that SWID would be in the process to try to do that. Certainly, we're looking to have a long-term relationship with this company that would be residing on the Indian River Eco District and the SWID property to receive the material and then to ultimately compost it. And we are also excited about the fact that they would be looking at this extended aerated static pile, which is an EPA-approved method to take the mulch that's refined in a certain way and then use an aggressive heat and time transfer process to convert the material into a more usable fertilizer instead of what has been done right now, which is to land apply the material. So the DEP does recognize land application as a way to get the recycling credits, but that's not certainly what we're proposing. We're proposing to enter an agreement with Atlas to receive and then to compost that material for a term of 10 years. And we do also notice that we had FEMA regulations that had to put a termination for convenience clause in there. That was also an issue of contention that they also wanted to make sure we understood. And we've been batting around some issues with Atlas, but that has been refined to a 30-day termination for convenience. Again, I don't think that's something that SWID staff would want to do because it's been such a process to get to this point, but it's something that we are required per FEMA to have in all of our contracts if we wanted to be considered for reimbursement, anything above what we would normally take in on an average time. So we have not promised any additional material above and beyond, but we certainly reserve the right to be able to use them if we have a large storm event. Knock on wood, we get through hurricane season this month, and certainly want to be able to rely on Atlas to not only handle the day-to-day, but possibly have some additional material that may come in from the county. So funding for the SWID yard waste processing recycling services budgeted and available in the SWID recycling account, which is funded from the SWID assessment user fees. The annual amount is approximately $1,359,750 based on the sealed bid. We have estimated a budget of $1.5 million in this fiscal year previously approved budget. Staff recommend that the board approve the yard waste processing and recycling agreement with Atlas Organics and authorize the chairman to execute the agreement after approval by the county attorney's office as to form and legal sufficiency. Receipt and approval of the performance bond by the county attorney and approval of the required insurance by the risk manager. I'm certainly available, myself or Mr. Manchimetta, and I believe we have representatives from the Echo District here if there are any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vinnie, two things. I think last week we approved the concrete crushing contract, and that's supposed to be spread in the yard waste area. So the $250,000 that they're proposing to do, that'll be above and beyond the concrete spreading, is that?
Yes, and we do have some money set aside in the SWID budget for improvements in that area based on previous comments that were made at this.
Okay. And then on the composting, are they, I thought at a previous backup, there was mention they might be bringing in biosolids, is that correct?
So that was something that's contemplated potentially in the future, but we made mention that any future composting with other material like biosolids would have to come back to the board as an amendment to the existing contract. So that's not in this contract. We have to negotiate that and bring that back to the board. Obviously, with the optics in play today, we want to be sensitive to that.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff?
Sorry, I did mention too that, we have the AquaTurf scrubber system. So we did some testing of the constituents that were in there. That's not to say that might be something they can use, but we sent all that information to Atlas. They're going to take a look at that. So there might be another method to remove that material from Osprey as part of our South County RO algal turf scrubber system, and perhaps bring it to the compost facility. And this is kind of like down the road once they get their feet under them and get situated. So that's something we're looking at as well.
Thank you.
Move staff recommendation.
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Zork. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, commissioners, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And with that, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we stand adjourned.